Scott Pilgrim Takes Off isn't what Scott Pilgrim fans wanted, but it's what we needed. Scott Pilgrim vs. the World is a remarkable coming-of-age story. It portrays the struggles of a young man, Scott himself, grappling with his inner demons, seeking redemption for past mistakes, and ultimately finding self-acceptance. This crucial aspect often gets overshadowed by reductive portrayals of Scott as an unlikable character and a pedophile. These arguments fail to capture the nuanced complexities of his personality and him as a character. While Scott Pilgrim vs. the World centers on Scott's personal journey, it is crucial to acknowledge Ramona Flowers' pivotal role in his transformation. Her presence serves not merely as a catalyst, but as a vital element in his growth. Without her, Scott's introspection, realization, and ultimate redemption would be non-existent. However, the film's exploration of Ramona's character remains shallow, failing to address her own flaws and complexities fully. While the comics offer a more nuanced portrayal, it still falls short of adequately exploring her insecurities and potential contributions to the narrative. This is where Scott Pilgrim Takes Off comes into play, giving us a deeper dive into Ramona's character and potentially offering a more balanced and comprehensive perspective on her and Scott's intertwined journeys when both stories are examined side by side. It also offers a different what-if pseudo-look into the potential future of Scott and Ramona's relationship after Book 6, or if you're a fan of the film, after the credits roll. While the title Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is ironic considering Scott literally takes off in the first episode, it holds symbolic significance. His temporary absence serves as a catalyst for Ramona's introspection and personal growth and gives us a glimpse into the lives of many people Scott has formed relationships with and how much better or worse their lives are without him. The transformative storytelling sits at the forefront of the journey for everyone involved, whether it be major or minor. But if you've seen the discourse, this is a Ramona Flowers story as stated before. And as I said, I think it was much needed. It does suck that we didn't get a one-to-one adaptation of the book. Yeah, but the book is a masterpiece in its own right, so I don't really mind that we didn't get an adaptation. The way Bryan-Lee O'Malley utilizes the format given to him is impressive, and how Edgar Wright was able to take that and transition it to the silver screen equally so. And I have no doubt in my mind that something like that would be astonishing in anime form. But again, I think what we got is more important for Scott Pilgrim as a franchise than a one-to-one adaptation is. But maybe one day we will get that. There is no Scott Pilgrim vs. the World without Ramona Flowers and her 7 evil exes. With the series making her the main character, we get to see a lot of her faults and insecurities. Just like Scott, she isn't necessarily a good person. I'd argue she's just as bad as him, if not worse sometimes. While Scott genuinely thinks he's a good guy and misremembers the scenarios in his head, Ramona willingly hurt the people in her life, manipulating and using them for her own gain, moving on to the next one as if they didn't matter. She has commitment issues, and this couldn't be more apparent than with Roxy, who in my opinion has the best episode of the series. This was the episode that made me realize that this show was about the type of person Ramona is. You can't help but sympathize for Roxy. You can tell she genuinely loved and cared for Ramona, but to Ramona, she was just another plaything, a one-off relationship, a bi-curious experiment. Nothing more, nothing less. She couldn't even say goodbye when she left for Canada. Ramona was afraid of confrontation. She didn't want to see someone hurt. She didn't want to have to deal with the guilt of that. She was selfish.
I'm sorry. For what? For leaving the way I did.
Throughout her life, she has had commitment issues. Instead of facing her problems head on, she jumps from relationship to relationship. It starts off small with Matthew Patel being a middle school thing, and as it goes further, it gets worse, like dating 2 twins at the same time just to make them jealous of each other. She just keeps repeating the cycle. What started off as harmless in retrospect became worse as time went along. If we look at the source material, her relationship with Gideon could be treated as karma given the person that he is. How far he would go, being manipulative and controlling. Taking all of that into account, it is telling though the lengths Ramona is willing to go to save Scott, who comparatively to the books and movies, she didn't spend too much time with. Ramona went from a somewhat passive character in the main adaptation, letting Scott take the reins and having to fight her evil exes, to someone going out of her way to fight for a relationship that hasn't even started yet, and in doing so, facing her own demons and rectifying past traumas with her exes. For the most part. It shows growth. The girl who once ran away from her problems and in doing so created more in the process is now going out of her way for someone other than herself. She isn't running anymore, she's facing them head on and trying to fix them. She's willing to put in the effort. This is also why I love the bits and development that are offered to her other exes, regardless of how small, like with Lucas Lee. There's closure for these characters, with the exception of Todd, which I didn't really like since he's my favorite ex and they just turned him into one big gay joke, which I don't mind Todd being gay, but I would have preferred a deeper look into his character. They could have really leaned into the fact that he somewhat mirrors Scott. No, they wear similar outfits, they play similar instruments in the band, he looks like Scott, they've dated the same girl, he's the anti-Scott, and I really like that about it, mixed with all the cool Dragon Ball Super Saiyan powers, but maybe some other time. But that being said, I don't think it's fair for the series to be brushed off and treated the way it has been, being accused of wokeness when Scott Pilgrim was already a pretty progressive story with all these themes and most of these plot points being touched upon in the source material and even the movie. So that doesn't make much sense to me, but I suppose like most things, a lot of the detractors haven't read the original source material, dropping the series after episode 1 because Scott quote-unquote dies, which isn't even true because by episode 2 it's revealed that he's actually alive and it's a pseudo murder mystery, the disappearance of Scott Pilgrim. That is doing the series a great disservice to just drop it after episode 1. Instead of doing a simple retelling of the story, something O'Malley has always been against, like in 2019 when Scott Pilgrim was supposed to get an adaptation. Well, when he was approached by Netflix for an adaptation, he declined it for this very reason. But I'm getting off topic. This elevates the original in a way that no normal adaptation, in my opinion, could, by giving us a different perspective, by adding more to what was already great. That doesn't undermine the original. I think it should be celebrated that O'Malley returned to the world of Scott Pilgrim to offer something new and exciting, where his talents would pivot away from Scott himself and into the supporting cast more so, especially Ramona, specifically Ramona. It should also be exciting that with the post-credit scene, we could potentially get more of this newly crafted world that resembles the original material, with Gideon being the main antagonist. Speaking of antagonists, I like how Scott is the series' major antagonist despite being absent for most of it, making him a sort of evil ex, alluding to a couple lines in the comic once Ramona claims that Scott's an evil ex waiting to happen in volume 5 and Gideon inviting him to join the League of Evil Exes in volume 6, and the theory that Scott could represent the number 0 because his association with it manifests with his love for Coke Zero and the 0 he wears on his shirt. These in combination with him becoming his nega Scott persona made the finale a treat. In addition to the episode title being The World vs. Scott Pilgrim, just brings everything together perfectly, where Scott Pilgrim vs. the World as a title could be read as Scott seeing himself as a victim, which he does throughout the original. It could mean the world is a victim of Scott Pilgrim, the things he's done and the people he's hurt, and that is poetic. This is a fine addition to the other adaptations, and I can't wait to see where we go from here. This is Grimtoki, this has been Beyond Animation. If you're new here, please feel free to subscribe. Liking the video would greatly support the channel, and if you want to take that support a step further, join the Patreon, or pick up some dope anime merch from the channel's continuous sponsor, Boomslang. Stay tuned for my next video where I talk about the importance of Yuji Itadori within the greater scope of Jujutsu Kaisen. See you in the next one. Peace.